It's been 6 months. That's quite ridiculous for me. It took me too long. I'm honestly only back because of two people. Well, one technically an organization, and the other, Russell Kelly, old friend of mine from social media, sent me a message telling me that he missed these little videos, and it honestly gave me the amount of inspiration, the attention, the feelings, everything that I needed to come back and do another video. And the second being the organization, the student-run organization at my university, found me because of the little clips I put on YouTube, and they interviewed me for one of their student profile things. And that happened today, and that was really weird. It just, I got a DM out of nowhere, and it was like, hey, we want to interview you. And I was like kind of taken back. It was like 9 a.m. Wasn't expecting a paragraph DM by anybody or by any means. And I just did it. It was very fun. Kind of weird being the person getting interviewed though, because that's a complete polar opposite of what I'd normally do, other than like in business or whatever. You just kind of ask questions and stuff. But it was like a complete weird switch from my traditional talking to people in person and kind of being the more controlling conversational person. Sorry, I left my notes. I love how I threw the phone away and then actually needed it like 35 seconds later. But yeah, I thought it was amazing that happened, because it sparked me immediately back to getting into kind of a more creative mood. And a lot of my projects now that are coming up require me to be kind of in a creative mindset, creating again. And I've just been empty. Like, I couldn't think of anything. I sat down, I'd say a week ago, trying to film this episode, because that's right when I got the one of the DMs. And I sat down and immediately blanked. I couldn't think of anything. That was like right when Russia invaded the Ukraine. Like, I had tons of things I could have talked about that I'd done for hours before, from the past 45 episodes. But I lacked. I blanked. And it kind of, after I thought about it afterwards, it was like, you do run out of creativity, and you run out of anything. It's like if you go to the gym every single day for a long enough time, you're going to get tired of it. You're going to be like, oh, I don't want to go. But then you force yourself to do it, and it can kind of come back. For me, I didn't force myself to get back creative. I just kind of slacked off. For me, I was a little bit insecure about doing a podcast in my room, making my roommates angry that I'm talking loud, but they already know I talk too much. That's not a big deal. But once I'm back doing it, like, this is only 3 minutes in, and I'm like mad excited. I'm super smiley. I'm really happy to do it. So I'm just like more than grateful for somebody to just reach out and tell me, hey, go do this again, because I completely forgot how much I loved it. And the interview too was just like, they had me write like a brief description before we did the interview, and I think I just covered most of it. So it was pretty brief. It was only like 15, 20 minutes, but it was still kind of fun. Because we were like in a hallway too, but it was just an interesting thing. And there's a portrait that's going to come out in the future. I got posted. It's going to be posted on the student thing or something like that. Super strange, honestly. Very enjoyable though, and I would love to do more of those things, because it totally fuels my ego. It's insane. it fills it up more than anything else. Well, joking aside, but it's just one of those things. And sometimes you do need a break though. It's nice to get that spark back after a while of just being like, oh, okay, I definitely need to get my act together and keep pushing to do more things, because 6 months not doing one of these, which have, in all seriousness, become kind of a journal, kind of a documenting how I'm doing in life, or even like what I'm thinking or who I'm trying to interview. It's nice to come back to something that's so familiar, but I hadn't experienced in a long time. And the break was nice, but I think I got to get back into it. Actually, no, I know I need to get back into it, because if that opportunity for the interview was brought on by 6-month-old podcasts and to 2 years old, like, I've been doing this for 2 years, but on and off, I can't be doing that. I got to be straight up on it all the time. But the creativity side does falter. Like, you really do, you can push yourself too far to the point where you don't put out the stuff that you should. You put out things that are like kind of half-assed, not as important, doesn't have the impact that you want, or you second guess yourself. Like right when I was starting this thing, I second guess myself all the time. I had a bad intro, my friends made fun of it. I thought that was hilarious afterwards after I changed it. But you get to that point and you go, okay, no, why would I even care? And it goes back to the thing I say ad nauseum. Don't care what other people are thinking, just do it. If you genuinely find it interesting, do it. You're always going to have those blocks of speed bumps in life and relationships and all that stuff, but you can still find a way to do anything. And the biggest purpose for anybody is to find something they truly enjoy. And I'm happy to be back, honestly. And even the other things that like I genuinely find fun is like the little business I got. That thing just, it's fun. But I keep thinking of like other ways to make it bigger and make it better and find different angles to hit. And I think if I keep doing it the way I'm going and just keep cold calling, finding more people, sending more DMs, it can get to a point where I can like start getting people, hiring people, start talking to the business kids at my school. As the organization that interviewed me calls this, like the communications department calls all the kids commies, and it's really funny to me because I'm heavily capitalist and I don't like the ideology of communism at all, and it's just really funny that I'm a commie now, but totally not in that communications context. But the business thing, and it's interesting to see, like they asked questions on the starting of it and like how I started it, which was the only answer I had was pure luck. If I'm completely honest, I just got lucky. I had a teacher that for some reason really liked me and gave me a really good opportunity to like co-op for my own business, which was I say it's cheating. And it just expresses so many different. It made me think more than I had before about the opportunities I've had. And you really think that if you're not putting yourself out there to do more things, you're just losing opportunities and you're losing experience that could appear. Like this year alone, I hadn't gone to the university campus like at all. I have a really good setup. You can see these lights over here, my big computer and all that stuff. And I'm set up and I isolated myself is what I realized. And I love being social, but as soon as I started doing all my work at home and all my things within my apartment, I realized I'm not as good at talking as I once was. It's gone down so bad, like so drastically. Like I used to be able to talk on ends, keep it like without the ums and ahs or remembering everybody's name, which I'm brutal at now. I don't know why. Probably because I'm just not actively thinking about who and what and where's the conversation's going or any of the nuances of it. But I'm just too focused on schoolwork, but like also not really, because thinking about other things, doing other projects. But it isolated me. Like I'm in my own bubble. I have like one window that looks out into the garbage. It's pretty funny. It's pretty dim. I don't know how this room's as bright as it is right now. But you get to that part and you're like, okay, where can I take it? Like, where are the next steps? And like, I'm always looking forward to the next thing. And I think I got stuck in overthinking things. Like within being isolated, I say isolated, but it's not really isolated. I talk to people all the time. I went out, did everything, but my term of isolation is just not talking to 1,000 people in a week instead of it's 100. But it became kind of strange because the ability I once had to communicate at I would say a fairly strong level dwindled down, and then the experiences and the things I'd be doing dwindled down, and then I would second guess going out to do something or taking a project this way or even just recording myself sitting in my room that took me 6 months to do. I would never have done that. I filmed one every week, random people, everybody, whatever it was. And I think it comes down to burnout. And I see that a lot of the time with some of my friends, especially with schoolwork, is they don't find the proper balance of doing schoolwork, socializing, and taking time for themselves. Maybe binge watching The Office, which I don't suggest because it's or so all the Office fans are gonna be pissed. Or just finding something that you genuinely enjoy. And for me, I'm lucky that the things I truly do love are somewhat productive in that terms, but it doesn't need to be. Sometimes you can just sit back and relax, talk with your friends, do whatever you want to do. But burnout is like a major problem, which I'm realizing is like it's part of my life pretty heavily now, because I'll go on like heavy runs. Like I've had tons of caffeine and I'm just pushing through all the work, gonna grind it out. And I get to the point where my brain just goes, yeah, you're not capable of doing this right now. You're capable of doing it later. Take a breather and break. And maybe my body and my mind just, they're better in tuned. They understand what's going to happen if I don't go crazy or I just completely isolate myself and watch TV for too long. But that's not who I want to be, you know? I think you got to find that balance of going, okay, we want to work, get all of these goals, manage and do all of those crazy things that you actually want to do, the dreams, the crazy things, like not even material things. Who cares about that? That's just another Instagram post for some random person. But the experiences you actually want to have, like those things can always be done if you manage it properly. Like everything's about managing and time. And there's one thing I saw recently and was commenting on one of the major differences between the extremely wealthy and not extremely poor, but poor people, or like the middle class, is the extremely wealthy buy back their time. They work, but they buy back the time on the menial things, like cleaning the house where you would get a maid, doing your dishes, raising your kids, arguably. That's why they got nannies. I don't know. Like it's one of those things where in the current stage that I'm at now, there's no possibility I'm doing that at all. I can't. No. I got to keep a budget for food, fun drinks, and other things. But you got to find a way. And I think my little hiatus helped me a lot because it was pretty much just like a burnout thing. I stopped sending those emails to people, stopped talking to those guests that I could have had, and I just completely got flat-footed. I stopped training my mind to like be like pitching. And I think it's just, it kind of goes back to like when I first started trying cold calls on people. It's it's kind of embarrassing the first time you try it because you're so nervous to make a phone call, even though you've made millions and millions of phone calls in your own life. Like, it's not a crazy concept, but you feel like you're interrupting someone's business or you're just wasting their time. But really, when you think about it, you're actually going to help them in the long run if you genuinely believe in what you're doing. But time is something you can't really get back. And I thought about, like, I like to reflect a lot. I like to think about the past decisions, the things I've said. And that it kind of falls into like an analyzing stage where I'm just consistently thinking of the same thing, different narratives, or like over focusing. And it honestly does come to a benefit sometimes, because then you're like, okay, yeah, we can really just go heavy on this. I'm overthinking an essay, or I'm overthinking a project, or I'm overthinking, okay, this design's going to look good this way. We need to upgrade these certain things in order to make it smoother, faster, better. And that's one thing I actually saw. Like, I just watched the Kanye West documentary, like the 3 episodes that were out on Netflix. And you realize, like, when there's a social narrative of just him, he had his breakdowns and all those things, and his mental health struggles and the loss of his mother and all that, those things play and kind of overlap and compound on each other. But just the work ethic of that person. The guy didn't stop. There was no time where he was like, okay, we're going to rest. Even when his mother passed away, he continued to tour and doing all those things. And it turned out it didn't work out. But it made him crazy successful. It's undeniably one of the most legendary artists of all time, just because of what he can do. Does weird things all the time, but it makes him that character. It makes him that legend that people will continuously talk about. Nobody's going to be like, oh, they might not even like the music. I haven't even listened to the new album or anything like that. I didn't buy the stem player. I'm not paying $200 for something I will only use like 3 times. Still cool, though. It's a cool idea for just a business perspective of being like, okay, we're going to sell. Yeah, it was like a rumored $100 million from Apple Music to have Donda 2 on it, exclusive. But he made a like $200 stem player instead. Weird decisions, but it gets news, it gets titles, it gets clicks, it gets all those, it gets attention to him. And I guess it feeds the ego and all that type of thing. But it's like the balance that he's missing at the time. And that's when you get people going crazy. And crazy is a bad word for it, especially when you're talking about mental stuff, but you get out of the loop. You kind of lose yourself a little bit. And I don't want to say I was ever near that or at that point, but you look at it, you look for something that you can connect to. And that's a lot of what I've been learning in school, at least, is actually more, no, not a lot. In like one class, my media ethics class is really interesting because it's just, I don't even consider it really class. Like, you have to write an essay on a couple like controversial topics and stuff, but I've explained this to my friends. The best way to explain that class, media ethics at least, is everything that happens in the media has a narrative, and there's so many different groups of people pushing it to make it that way because it either gets clicks or anything like that. Like, it's just an attention-based thing. And you realize that the news has been created to be like more like a memorabilia thing. Like, they're trying to sell Fox News hats, or they're trying to sell CNN t-shirts so they can replace their new director or whatever he did because of the controversies and stuff. But you look and you realize there's all, like, it's gone so skewed. It's scary how weird it is. And even with like the Ukrainian defensive war, the Ghost of Kiev and Snake Island and all of those stories, well, Ghost of Kiev hasn't been proven fake, but it came, one of the videos that the news, like CBC was actively using, CNN were actively using, was from a 2007 video game, or it was like some old game, like it wasn't like Arma 3 or like one of those really good ones, but it was just a bad footage that someone was like, oh, this looks like Ukraine. And then the Snake Island thing, everybody died. It's more of a case of propaganda and how they're manipulating kind of the West to say, oh, they're winning or losing. It's nobody knows what's actually happening unless you're in the intelligence agencies, which I'm not, sadly. That'd be kind of cool. But yeah, I wouldn't be doing a podcast if I was in the intelligence agencies. But you look at that and you go, oh, there's narratives coming out. You can see that when there's videos of like Russians captured, that they're literally my age. That's the scariest part for me. It's like they're conscripted soldiers that think they're doing military activities within the Russian border, but they're in the Ukraine in an active war, which is nuts. And like apparently I can't tell if this is a true fact or not. Take this with salt, like it's any news broadcast or anything. But the reason the Ukrainians are getting such a major edge is the Russians are stationary during the night, and the Ukrainians have a bunch of American or North American or just Western night vision. So they're able to use that for the like night ops and like defending them better and like getting cities back and constantly pushing. And it's insane to see the collective like support for a country, because it's just brutal. Nobody wants war. Nobody wants that at all. But it proves a lot on how the cultures are shifting, especially how I guess this war cured COVID. Everybody just kind of forgot about it. Ontario's removing masks at the end of March. Everything's getting back to normal, but we're back at war kind of thing. We're worried about the border issues. We're worried about all these things. And it goes to, what is the next thing that's going to propel the media and propel people to be angry at something? And I think that kind of plays into how people react and how people communicate, because for me, I looked at this stuff and I immediately, for lack of better words, kind of fell in love. Like I was very interested. I got on like the Telegram accounts from the Ukrainians. I was really using Google Translate to figure out what was happening. I was doing so many different things. Oh, they're using water. This is why I was afraid of using this, being in here. Can't hear anything. You hear too much, sorry. But you see so many different narratives and all those things, and you can't collectively be like, this is the one correct thing. And I think that's what played into me taking such a long break, was I couldn't sit down and collectively think, this is what I need, or this is the one true fact. There was no way for me to be like, this is what I actually want. And I think that interview kind of helped out. Like it showed me that I wanted to be back into doing something and actively doing it weekly, hopefully. Maybe I can stick my stuff up, but we'll see what happens. And like, even though this is probably going to be pretty brief, I don't think I can ramble for much longer, unless I have a guest, which I think I can get one. We'll see. Yeah, it's just nice. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.